Welcome. We're talking about the Indian property market, one that's generating a lot of buzz lately. Market analysts estimate a 5% CAGR, that's compound annual growth rate, in residential pre-sales over the next 5 years. That's a huge jump compared to what we saw before COVID, and it immediately caught my attention. To help us unpack what's going on, I've brought in an expert who's been closely tracking trends in real estate. So, what's driving this optimism? Analysts point to a few key factors. First, inventory overhang is at its lowest level in 15 years. Now, if you're wondering what that means, inventory overhang is essentially a measure of supply and demand. It's calculated by looking at unsold inventory relative to the average monthly sales rate. A low overhang like the one we're seeing now tells us that demand is outpacing supply, and that naturally puts upward pressure on prices. For example, Mumbai currently has its lowest inventory overhang since 2010, just 1.2 years. Bengaluru's numbers are the lowest since 2008, and even in Gurgaon, where major developers operate, this situation is similarly tight. To put it simply, at the current pace, it would take just over a year to clear all the unsold units in Mumbai, which points to a real scarcity in supply. Now, let's talk about affordability. This might sound counterintuitive because prices are rising, right? But affordability is actually at its best in 15 years. Here's how analysts measure it using the EMI to household income ratio, essentially the percentage of income that goes toward mortgage payments. Across major cities, this ratio sits between 21% and 51%. Even in Mumbai, the most expensive market, affordability has improved significantly since 2010 despite rising prices. That's because incomes have also gone up, keeping things manageable for a larger portion of the population. Interest rates are the third big factor. Yes, rates have risen in the past couple of years, which impacted affordability, especially in the budget friendly segments. But analysts now believe the interest rate cycle is peaking. As borrowing costs potentially ease, home ownership becomes more accessible, especially for smaller 1 BHK and 2 BHK units. These three factors, limited supply, improved affordability, and potential for lower interest rates, create a strong setup for developers. Something else we're seeing is developer consolidation. The sector is transitioning from being fragmented and opaque to more organized and transparent. Reforms like the implementation of stricter regulations have pushed weaker players out, favoring larger, financially sound developers with proven track records. That's good news for buyers as well. The market is also shifting from being driven by short term investors to end user demand, which is a huge positive for long term stability. Investors, especially the speculative ones, are sensitive to price fluctuations. When prices dip, they often sell quickly, making downturns worse. End users, on the other hand, are buying homes to live in, driven by long term needs rather than short term gains. This shift makes the market less volatile and more resilient. Now, some people might worry about a property bubble, but analysts believe India's market is structurally different from those seen in the US, Japan, or China. One of the biggest reasons is household debt. At the peak of property bubbles in other countries, household debt as a percentage of GDP was extremely high, 93% in the US, 68% in Japan, and 62% in China. In India, that number sits at a much healthier 42%, which acts as a safety net. India's urbanization rate is another critical factor. At just 35 to 36%, it's far below the 75% seen in the US and Japan when their property markets peaked. That leaves a lot of room for growth as more people move to cities. Pair that with favorable demographics. India's prime home buying age group, 30 to 39, is expected to keep growing until 2037. Compare that to China, where this group is already shrinking. And you can see why analysts are optimistic about India's long term demand. Of course, no market is risk free. If prices rise too quickly, it could slow demand and lead to a buildup of inventory, which increases the risk of corrections. Land price inflation is another concern, but because it squeezes developer margins, making projects less profitable. Add to that potential macroeconomic headwinds like slower GDP growth or project delays, and it's clear there are risks to monitor alongside the opportunities. What's interesting is how growth in real estate doesn't stop at homes. A thriving property market has ripple effects across other industries: construction, building materials, home appliances, furniture, even financial services like mortgages and home loans. It creates jobs, attracts foreign investment, and drives infrastructure development, improving transportation, utilities, and other essential services. It's not just about building homes, it's about creating entire ecosystems. There's also a social aspect to this. When people see their home values go up, it boosts their confidence and optimism. That can lead to more spending and investment across the economy. On the flip side, rapid price increases can make housing unaffordable for some, creating inequality and potential social tension. Policymakers have a crucial role here to ensure growth is sustainable and benefits everyone. The Indian property market is complex but full of potential. Analysts see a strong case for growth supported by favorable demographics, urbanization, and structural improvements. At the same time, keeping an eye on risks like price speculation and supply demand imbalances is critical. Thanks for joining me on this topic of India's property market. I hope it gave you a clearer picture of where things stand today and where they might be heading. Until next time.